Okay, everyone. So we're just going to continue for a couple more slides, and then there's some reading for you to do today. So that's really the focus, and tomorrow we'll put it all together. Muhammad does take followers to Medina. He wins support and ultimately gets larger. We know that he travels back to Mecca, claims the city for Islam. And we also see the death of Muhammad in 632. That becomes significant because at this time, individuals who were followers of Islam ultimately start to ask about who will be the successor. If Muhammad was the last of the prophets, there won't be another prophet, but who will be the political or religious authority figure? How will the community kind of stay together? So a few big things that are just big takeaways from the reading that you did already. Like Christianity and Judaism, Islam is monotheistic. There is submission to one God. It is incredibly monotheistic. Allah is seen as an all-powerful being who created everything. Allah is the Arabic word for God, and so Muslims would believe that Allah isn't necessarily one specific God. It means God, but also would be the same God for, say, Christians and Jews. So there is some connection to those other monotheistic religions. Those who seek salvation in the afterlife would subject themselves to the will of Allah. There is a sense of an afterlife in the tradition of Islam. Muhammad is significantly not seen as divine in any way, not superhuman in any way. He is a messenger in the faith, and he is somebody who had received revelations from Allah that become the Quran. But Muhammad might be significant to Muslims. He might be seen as an ideal Muslim, somebody who might be a role model of sorts. The Quran is organized into surahs, 114 surahs in all, and they are drawn together after the time of Muhammad's death, and they are put into writing. Again, it's in Arabic. Some of the teachings in the Quran are ethical, some are political theory, some are law. There's a variety of sacred texts in the Quran, and again, there's mention of a variety of different prophets. The Quran is not a narrative story about any one thing, it's a series of different things. The cultural practices, of course, do vary amongst many Muslims around the world. People may wear different things, eat different things, kind of practice Islam with some unique cultural traditions. But there are 5 pillars of Islam, and we will watch a movie about this tomorrow in class, so you can get some additional information. And here I'm using the English words rather than the Arabic words. But the 5 pillars are a way to unify Muslims around the world so that people are kind of part of a community of faith, regardless of where they may be practicing or what culture they're a part of. The 5 pillars of Islam, the first is faith. There is a testament that Muslims may make. There is no God but Allah. Muhammad is the messenger. So seeing that as like the key testament, even individuals who convert to Islam, people can convert to Islam. This would be the way of doing that. It's a testament of the faith. Prayer is another tenet of Islam. It's one of the 5 pillars. Prayer would be taking place 5 times a day. Muslims would pray at specific points in time when other Muslims are also praying, and people pray toward Mecca. Most of the time, Muslims may pray individually. So even while at work or while at school, I've talked to BCA students, and just like any religion, there's a variety of different practices. Some students will find a space where they can pray with other students who might be Muslim at the particular time of prayer. Some students have shared that they might wait till they get home to pray. So there's a lot of allowance for if you can't pray at a particular moment, you might have some ability to pray later. I took a student one time on a trip. It was a Model UN trip. And we looked for a place for the student to pray while away. We were looking for like the campus, where the mosque was on campus. And, we found it, but the student was telling me that the prayer changes a little bit when you travel. So, just interesting, kind of specifics about some of the prayer. Alms is one of the tenets, one of the pillars. This would be essentially charity, like we saw tithing in Christianity. There's a big focus on giving money to those who are disadvantaged, giving food, taking care of people who are disadvantaged. In some cases, it's a very specific tax. Communities may do that. It also is kind of embedded in some of the holidays. And this concept of charity is maybe very connected to the lived experience of Muhammad, who was orphaned as a youngster and maybe experienced some of the tough times. Fasting is something we associate oftentimes with Ramadan, which is the 9th month of the lunar calendar. This is significant because the 9th month is seen, according to tradition, when Allah is said to have revealed the Quran to Muhammad. This, even though that happens over the course of many times when it initially happened, the Muslims would fast between dawn and sunset, and that means no drinking, no eating. There are other things that are sacrificed as well. And it's essentially an important time for Muslims. There's a holiday and festival at the end. And I've had a lot of students tell me that they might wake up kind of, very, very early in the morning before dawn to have a large meal and then go back to bed and then fast all day, and then break the fast, at sunset time, maybe with family members. And Ramadan, because it's part of a lunar calendar, doesn't always happen on the same date. So sometimes it happens in June, and we've had our BCA field day in June. It's a hard time for fasting because there's no water, and sometimes it's particularly hot, and the day is super long. The last pillar is the pilgrimage. It is known as the Hajj, Hajj. Somebody who makes the pilgrimage is a Haji, Haji. And this is requested to be done at least once in a Muslim's lifetime. People do go on Hajj as part of a group oftentimes, because Mecca is a place that's off limits to non-Muslims. The transportation and the travel is very, very specific. And so it's a trip that people plan way in advance. But we'll look at some examples of pilgrimages. It's, a large scale pilgrimage, that continues into today's time. Of course, every Muslim is expected to worship Allah directly. So there's a lot of individual roles within the faith. We don't really see a hierarchy like the Pope or an archbishop, that whole entire institution of what we saw with the Christian church during the Middle Ages. We don't really have a structure for that. There are particular roles people might play. Sometimes we might hear of a prayer leader, so someone in the community who's serving as a prayer leader. There may also be a specific role for religious scholars. Those who are religious scholars hold a lot of responsibility and status in Islam because they interpret some of the Sharia law. So kind of the moral code that some Muslims may follow, kind of the essence of, right and wrong. Would this be allowed? Would this be allowed? Those particular types of decisions are sometimes made in consult with individuals who are religious scholars. And they may also be individuals who are involved in state law. If the society is an Islamic society that's embedding Sharia law, into the political system. Just something to be aware of. This is a place where we see a lot of variety. There's lots of different schools of thought related to Sharia law. So there's not like one single Sharia law. There are texts that may be shared. So the Quran or the Hadith or various texts, but interpretation of some of those texts may vary. So there's like very conservative Sharia. There may be more liberal Sharia. So, kind of how and in what way people do interpret. And we see that in, all religions, just kind of a variety of different ways in which individuals are interpreting, or in this case, religious scholars may be interpreting religious texts. And there's a variety of religious texts that might be considered. The Hadith is another one. In addition to the Quran, the Hadith is kind of about Muhammad. It is much more about the role model that Muslims may seek in Muhammad. Last slide, Muslims generally don't see a separation in the time period in the 630s between a political and religious authority. And Muhammad had been an authority kind of on a political level, a military level. There are times when he serves as a military leader to defend the community of Islam. And then we also see the society become expanded during the lifetime of Muhammad and after his death. So this is also kind of a military expansion, and we also see leaders playing a religious authority role. At the same time, Muhammad is described as a prophet, somebody who has the capacity to receive these revelations. There are other prophets in the religion of Islam, Abraham, Jesus, Moses, other prophets. who had come before Muhammad, but if Muhammad is the last of the prophets, there won't be prophets who follow Muhammad. So there's a lot of questions about who will be the successor in 632 upon the death of Muhammad. The decision is made to put Abu Bakr into the position of caliph, which is someone who is leading the community, political, religious authority, but not as a prophet. Kind of a caliph is like a successor type of role. And Abu Bakr, for about 2 years, will kick off a time known as the time of the four caliphs, or the Rashidun Caliphate. This is 4 different individual rulers. We'll talk about this some more tomorrow. The various rulers I'll just leave on this last slide, and then I'm going to note the reading for you to do. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Ultimately, these are selected because people in the elite portion of the community ultimately decide that this is, kind of the next successor and the next successor. There are issues every single time there's a new successor. There's debate within the community about who should be the next successor. And so some of these questions about succession start to begin a rift that we'll see is the rift between Sunni and Shia. And in modern day, we see some different sects to this date within the community of Islam. Doesn't always mean that there will be inevitable conflict. Some societies do have sectarian conflict, but it's not necessarily always the case. And some conflict may not necessarily be rooted in the questions of succession, even though those differences still exist. Sometimes modern day sectarian conflicts can be related to modern day, issues, because these groups have existed for some time. But just like we see in all religions, disagreements, that's where we'll talk more tomorrow. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Be well.